is still on tree post midnight, and things are about to get more worse. A swoosh of cold wind swept past Jazlyn swiftly. She looked out from her door to the stairway, which was just beside her room. Jazlyn went out of the room, leaving the door open. The stairway is completely dark, only to be filled with few thunderstrikes flashes few minutes once. She stands at the end of the top staircase and looks down underneath.
Mom? Dad? Are you guys down there?
Suddenly, Jazlyn fell as if something is dashing towards her. She fell as if someone was behind her, or something perhaps. She slowly turns her head back with a mixture of terrified and shocked feeling, to see who or what it was. She turned around only to find herself standing in that dark place, and no one else is visible at all. She was really terrified at the moment. She looked at the door right opposite her room, which is her parents' room. She went and knocked on the door for a while, but no response came from inside. She even tried to open the door, but it was locked from inside.
Mom! Dad! Open up please, I'm afraid. I feel like someone else is here with me. Open up the door.
No one answered her. Neither the door was opened. She stood there for a few more seconds, and at last, she gave up and walks away from there, heading to the stairways. And that's when a doorknob crackling sound was heard by Jazlyn. She turns back to find where the sound is emanating from, and saw the doorknob of her parents' room is moving, as if someone from inside the room is opening the door. Jazlyn was excited, thinking that at last her parents has woke up from their sleep. Jazlyn quickly went to the doorway and stood in front of it.
Mom! Dad! Open up faster! What's taking you so long? I'm shivering here.
The door were unbolted, but the door haven't opened yet. Jazlyn got frustrated as she had tried all she can to push the door open but failed. She then stood there and started to shout.
Open the door now!
Something was happening right after she shouted. She could feel the heavy winds hustling around her, and the flashes from the thunderstorms outside kept striking every now and then. Jazlyn stood there terribly terrified, and suddenly her room door was slammed shut vigorously. Her parents' room's door were opened. The door was not fully opened, but just slightly opened. Jazlyn slowly turned her way toward her parents' room and braced herself forward.
Mom? Dad?
A sudden loud thunderclap sound filled the whole area. Jazlyn was jump-scared by the sound of that massive thunderclap. At the same time, the door slowly opened by itself, revealing the pitch-black darkness which filled the room inside, accompanied by a strong, heavy stench smell. She slowly stepped into the dark, lightless room and went forward, walking in. Little that she failed to notice was there was a charcoal black smoky shadow entity floating behind her, just beside the entrance of the room on the right side. It was floating there, few inches away from the floor, silently, watching Jazlyn who's in front of it. Jazlyn stopped walking and stood there still. She can't bear to hear these voices. She closed tight both her eyes and firmed her hands by gripping them hard. With a flash moment, suddenly Jazlyn turned around to see on her back if the voice was coming from there. But there wasn't anyone or any entity for that matter. The dark shadow figure was there moments ago, but not now. Not anymore. Jazlyn felt something dropped on her forehead from above. She wiped it off with her finger and there was a flash of thunderclap outside, correspondingly emanating a bright light surrounding the whole area. In this short instance, with the fear of the loud sound of the thunder, Jazlyn bowed her head down slightly and saw that the droplets remaining, which she wiped just now on her index finger, was red in color. She felt the adrenaline rush through her blood, and her heart is pumping really fast for every second that's been crossing past. Slowly she looked up at the ceiling where she was standing. A dark, smoky, demon entity was emanating right in front of her, looking directly at her. Its gaze was fixed on Jazlyn. The only thing that clearly visible is its terrifying, eerie, snake-like eyes, and not to mention its few inches long tongue which rolled out from its mouth, hanging out. Jazlyn froze where she stood while looking up at the horrible, spooky entity. The temperature in the room drastically went down as Jazlyn was literally freezing. Jazlyn wanted to scream hard, but she couldn't find her voice to do it. She closed both her eyes tight shut and forced herself to move away from there. And suddenly, she let out a huge scream as loud as she could. Then she slowly opened her eyes and looked up. The dark entity was still there, and without a warning or so, it dashes towards Jazlyn. She turned her back towards the entrance of the room and ran away as fast as she could. She almost reached the exit of the room when she slipped and fell down right on the entrance of the room. Just when she forced herself to get out, something held tight one of her legs and pulling her inside with all the force. She screams in fear and tried to swing it to avoid from being pulled inside. Somehow, luckily, she managed to fight it over and got out from the room. She's out of the room now, right at the entrance, but the room's door was still open, and it's eerily spooky to look from outside. Then she saw it, that horrible demonic face, that dark entity. Now it was floating in the middle of the room looking directly at Jazlyn. It raised one of its smoky hand pointing at Jazlyn. Suddenly it dashed toward Jazlyn again. This makes Jazlyn to stumble upon her own feet and fell down. She's still looking at the entity dashing towards her, and in fear she covered up her face with both her palms. But right before the entity reached out, the door was automatically slammed shut. And Jazlyn heard a loud, demonic screaming emanating from inside the room. Jazlyn was breathing hard and totally scared, but also thankful that she nearly escaped from whatever that she just faced. She then stood up and decided to go downstairs to the living room area. On her first step to go down, she heard something.
Jazzy, sweetheart, come over down here. I need you. I need your help, dear. Jazz. Mom, is that really you? Where's Dad? I'm going crazy up here. Don't worry, sweetheart. Mommy is here for you. Dad will be along soon. Just come down here. We'll take care of you. Okay, Mom. I'm coming down now.
Jazlyn slowly went downstairs step by step. The stairway wall on the side was covered with few big portraits. The first portrait, descending from up, belongs to Elizabeth. It was taken when she was still 8 years old. The second portrait beside it, nailed on the center of the stairway, was of her parents. It was their marriage picture. Jazlyn noticed something disturbing on the portrait of her parents. There was a scratch mark, like being scratched by a huge claw. And the weirdest thing about it was, there's blood. Blood dripping out from the scratch mark of her parents' portrait. And the droplets filled the stairway below, with bloodstains here and there. Jazlyn was spooked and stood in the middle of the stairway for a moment. Thunderstorms continues outside the house without stopping. Jazlyn came to her senses and thought that it's better to just move on and ignore what she just saw, as she was implementing in her mind that this all was just a figment of her imagination due to the fear of darkness that's surrounding the whole house. Jazlyn continued her steps down, and when she almost reached the bottom of the stairs, there was one more portrait was hanging just by the end corner before the stairs. Jazlyn went and stood in front of it while examining the portrait. For her surprise, all that she saw was a mirror image reflecting her own self in the portrait. She brings herself closer to inspect it, and suddenly the portrait becomes shadowy and misty, filled with some smoke. Curiously, she was still looking at it when she screamed suddenly, looking at what she saw in that portrait. The misty and shadowy smoke begins to slowly fade away, revealing a complete face with the head. But only that. No body attached to it. And to make things more worse, the neck part was severely torn, while there was some nerves and torn muscles sticking out from the cut-up neck. The reason for Jazlyn's overwhelming fear is that face in that portrait was hers. Sweats were dripping off her face, and Jazlyn is definitely in total fear now. She ran away from the stairway to the living room, and after a few seconds, she turned back to see the last portrait. And for her surprise, the portrait was normal as usual, with her picture in it. Jazlyn was in a peach-colored dress and also was carrying her pet cat, Nordy, in that portrait. She was confused and shocked at the same time as what's happening around her. Jazlyn don't really recall of having a pet before. Jazlyn holds her head with both hands and squat down on the floor, and tears started to come out from her eyes. Then, while in that scary defining moment, Jazlyn heard Mrs. Ravenheart's voice again.
Jazlyn, honey, what's taking you so long? We're just here in the kitchen. Come over. We've been waiting so long for you. Come on, come to mommy.
Mom? I'm scared, Mom. There's something here in this house. It tried to kill me. I saw something. Mom, I'm coming now.
Good, dear, good. Come on, come join us. We'll protect you. We'll protect your soul.
Jazlyn walked halfway through the darker hallway and stopped in her tracks suddenly. She had this weird feeling from earlier, since first heard her mom's voice.
What? Protect my soul? What do you mean, Mom? 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 Dad?
At this point, no one is answering Jazlyn anymore. She was more spooked by this. Jazlyn stood still at the waypoint to the kitchen. It was still dark inside the manor. The dripping sound was actually still continuing despite all that happened a while ago. Since Jazlyn was standing in the darker hallway, the dripping sound that was emanating was even more loudly, indicating that it is coming from the kitchen, which is located at the end of the narrow hallway which conjunct the main living room with the kitchen. Jazlyn braced herself and moved forward to find her parents. She walked slowly through the pathway. Inside the narrow tunnel, there were empty candlelight stands. Those candle stands were located each on every corner of the narrow tunnelway, so it lights up the way in dark. The sound was getting louder now. Jazlyn then reached the kitchen at last, and she directly saw something hanging from the sink that's in the center of the kitchen. But since it was dark, she couldn't see it clearly, although the shape of it looks rather small, like a small-sized animal. Jazlyn was afraid of it, yet she braced herself forward, curiously wondering what it might be. She then gets close to the sink and saw it. She froze there for a while. It was a cat. It was tied with strings on its legs and tied to the pipe that's attached to the sink. It was sliced open in the middle from its jaw to the bottom of its tail. The inner organs of that pitiful cat were literally hanging out from the sliced, rotten carcass. Bloods were dripping out from the cat's sliced body into the sinkhole. Jazlyn was disgusted to see the scene, but she still went forward and looked down into the sink, and it was filled with a lot of bloods inside it. Now Jazlyn has figured out the mystery of that dripping sound. It was this blood that's been dripping from the cat and falls directly into the sink. She noticed something familiar about the deceased cat. She saw a name tag on the neck of the cat. She looks at it closely. There was a name written in the tag, together with few numbers. Jazlyn was both shocked and confused now, as she can't remember about who this cat is. She saw it, of course, in the portrait just now on the stairways, but she doesn't have any memories regarding having this cat as a pet, yet she was holding it in the portrait. This makes Jazlyn really uncomfortable, and it definitely increased her fear to another level. She then heard a bubbling sound. The bloods inside the sink began to rise up. Jazlyn quickly backed away from there and stood near the fridge, which was located on the right-hand side of the kitchen. The pool of blood began to flow out of the sink. It keeps coming out more and more from inside the sink as if it's an endless stream of blood river. Fear is taking over Jazlyn's mind. The voice was echoing around the house, eerily and spookily. Jazlyn was terribly afraid upon hearing the last words of that unknown voice.
Well, I'm you, of course.
These words are making Jazlyn's whole body trembling, while the stream of blood almost filled the kitchen's floor beneath her feet. For a moment there, Jazlyn totally forgot about the pool of bloods. There was like a flood in the kitchen due to the eerie voice. She began to feel both her feet was soaked by the bloody stream. She came back to her senses and tried to find a way out of the kitchen. Jazlyn fought her way through the flood of blood and moves forward to get back to the living room. Jazlyn managed to fight the flood of blood on her way, but unexpectedly she slipped and fell right into it. She tried to get back up, but deep down, something was pulling her down, dragging her to the bottom of the thick flood. The flood was only until knee-high, but something beneath it was way much deeper than logic can explain. Jazlyn was struggling to get out from that pool of blood, but it's getting harder and harder. Jazlyn was being pulled inside deep down into the stream of blood. Jazlyn thought that this was it. Her life gonna end in a moment, in this pool of evil. Right then, that moment, she heard the voice. Somewhat this voice sounds familiar to Jazlyn. She heard it from inside the pool of blood.
Jazlyn, get out of here. You can do this. Trust yourself.
Please.
Suddenly, a bright light was emanating from the bottom of the deep blood pool. The light dashed towards Jazlyn and suddenly she rose up to the surface of the pool and let out a huge breath. She tried to catch her breath and get back her stamina. After a few seconds, she pulled herself out of the blood pool below and managed to stand up with her feet. She slowly hauled the walls nearby and went to the narrow tunnel again. But, for her deadly surprise, once she reached the narrow tunnel, it all seemed so silent suddenly. No sounds of blood streaming, or any noise of water dripping, or even flowing out. She was shocked and curious at the same time. Jazlyn stood at the end of the narrow tunnel and peeked through the side corner. And miraculously, the pool of blood on the floor and the dripping blood and everything else is gone. The kitchen is completely clean, without any drop of stains of bloods anywhere, at all. But Jazlyn's gaze was stuck upon the only thing that was the same as before. That hanging dead cat, Nordy. It was still being hanged on there by the sink. In just a blink of an eye, the feline's head sharply turned towards Jazlyn's gazing. Those slit pupils of Nordy was fixed with Jazlyn's gaze now. She saw this and her heart beats way much faster. The thunder strikes continues outside while emanating bright flashes every time it strikes. Jazlyn felt as if someone was watching her. She looked at the kitchen windows, and right on another thunderstrike, she saw a little figure spookily staring at her from outside the window. Jazlyn just looked away from there, reminding herself that this might be another trick from the evil inside there to scare her more. She then headed back to the living room through the narrow tunnel. She was really afraid of the sudden movement of the dead cat, and the figure at the windows. Suddenly Jazlyn heard Mr. Ravenheart's voice out of nowhere.
Jazlyn! Jazz! Can you hear me, honey?
But the voice was distantly far away from where Jazlyn is. She focused and tried to follow the direction from where the voice of her dad came. The voice was coming from the room in basement, which is located at the end of the kitchen on the other side.
Jazz, honey? Mom and I are trapped in your basement. Can you hear me, Jazzy? Answer me!
Dad, I can hear you!
Wait, honey, wait. Good. Now come here and help us out from here. Someone locked the basement door from outside. The spare key is on the small shelf just beside the cupboard in the kitchen.
Dad, something is not right here. I saw some things here from just now. There's a dead cat here being hanged, Dad. I'm scared. I'm really afraid now. And blood. There's lots and lots of blood here, Dad. I saw it just now.
Honey, listen to me. We don't have time for this. Just pull yourself together. And be brave, Jazlyn. You can do this. You can use the torchlight in the cupboard over there. Swing you down.
Okay. Hang on, Dad. I'm coming.
Jazlyn walked slowly through the kitchen, passing the sink. She looked on her left while passing, and she noticed the cat was now hanging lifelessly, just as how a dead cat will be. Its head was just facing down right into the sink inwards, while the bloods are still dripping off the dead carcass. Jazlyn felt relief after knowing that the cat was not being alive as few minutes ago when it looked at Jazlyn. She then walked forward, few steps more, and she reached the cabinet her dad told her about. She opened the handle of that cabinet, which attached to the corner wall of the kitchen. She checked few small drawers inside it and found the torchlight. She tried switching it on and it didn't light up on the first try. Then Jazlyn tried tapping hard on the body of the torchlight a few times and turned it on. It does lights up, and at the same moment Jazlyn felt as if something is there beside her, and she turned to her right only to find a spooky small little figure was staring at her. There was no face or any other features attached, except only two pair of big great eyes. Those eyes were looking devilishly demonic. Jazlyn keeps staring at those eyes as if she's in a trance. Jazlyn tried her best to move, but her body was paralyzed completely. Suddenly she saw something scarier. Underneath those eyes, there was a nose visible, and a mouth, and the lips slowly split apart, creating a spooky, spine-chilling smile to Jazlyn.